It is 6 o'clock. This is November 6th. We are in the Cardinal Room. This is the Education Committee meeting. We don't have a lot of things on the agenda, so I'm hoping it moves quickly, and we shall see. Are there any announcements or communications?
There are none.
Are there minutes? There are minutes from October, so if anyone has any corrections, give them to Brooke. The enrollment report is information as usual. The next item on the agenda is comparison district achievement data list. So we have, upon various occasions when we go through and look at data, we've compared ourselves with different districts, and I think at this time we want to decide on a list of schools that we consider our peers for purposes of data comparison and standardize that list. So,
that is
Dr. Wheeler?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ludwig. We have gone through a list of districts and looked at this in several different ways. What we settled on here for our recommendation in order to standardize all of our benchmarking, in the past there have been some concerns that we cherry pick various districts as we are developing our data comparisons. So we wanted to come up with a list that we would use on a standard regular basis, and that will give us some longitudinal comparisons as well. We looked at several districts nearby. We then looked at the list of districts that Ms. Bray uses for financial comparisons. We thought a good jumping off point would be to take that list. However, we eliminated Jenkintown from the list because they are so much smaller than us. We added North Penn to the list because when some of our constituents speak to the topic of data, they do reference North Penn High School often. So this is the list that we are suggesting. Most of these districts are districts that join us in sending students to Eastern, and we have added, again, North Penn, Wissahickon, and Colonial, because we believe that those would be nearby pertinent comparison districts. There's a question from a board member, and so we wanted to bring this forward for some discussion.
So are there any people who would like to ask questions or make comments?
I'm wondering what the criteria are.
Oops, you want to...
Test. Magic touch. I'm wondering what the criteria are that that go into making the decision. What the criteria that yeah, I'll try this one. Thank you. One of the criteria that seems relevant to me is proximity. And compared to North Penn, to us, North Penn is not our direct neighbor. They're sort of one away through Wissahickon or Hatboro Horsham, and I wonder if other, neighbors of neighbors would be appropriate just because proximity makes sense. In which case, I would include places like Lower Moreland or Methacton or Lower Merion, Upper Merion, and I recognize there's at some point too many. So it seems that having some sort of criteria to decide would make sense.
And you're correct. We do want to limit the list to some extent. North Penn, as I said earlier, is on the list because when our community members have discussed data at meetings, that is one of the districts that they tend to refer to. But we are certainly open to input from the board. Mrs. Morrison, would you like to weigh in on this, or?
Personally, I feel comfortable with the list that's there, the list that we came up with, and I apologize for arriving a little late, so I don't know what was stated before I arrived. The districts up there are contiguous. I believe that Mrs. Bray, our business administrator, uses a very similar list. That's also a list of schools who attend Eastern, so vocational schools. So I think in all of those ways, and almost all of those schools are contiguous. I do agree with you, Mr. Sirota, that we should have a guiding reason for the districts we use in our comparison data. I think that guiding reason can come out of a discussion we're having right now.
I mean, and there are a number of criteria we could use. We could use socioeconomic
Yep.
status, like number of free and reduced lunch, roughly. We could use size. We could use, other comparable demographics in terms of. But at some point, we have to just settle on a list. And
I was just going to say, that's exactly right. I think we've talked in the past about using districts that might be demographically similar to ours. And a while ago, we used to talk about Unionville, Chadsford, which is far away, but it's similar size, similar demographics. But I don't know, that's probably, I don't know if they're contiguous, if that's makes them more relevant. I don't know.
yeah.
All right, so my understanding, this is all the contiguous districts plus a couple more. Okay, so it's all the contiguous districts plus North Penn and Colonial.
And Lower Moreland. No, Colonial's adjacent, but Lower Moreland and North Penn are not adjacent to us.
Right, and those are the ones that are sent to Eastern as well. I mean, is there a magic number? I mean, I don't know. Is there a specific number that we're looking for of schools to compare us to, or does it, I mean, obviously we don't want too many, but we don't want too few.
I do think that if we have too many, if you can picture the data presentation and the slides, you want to have something that we use regularly moving forward, but also a number of districts that are manageable.
I guess the one that sticks out at me as different from the others is North Penn, because it's further from Philadelphia. It's a lot bigger than us. It is not contiguous to us. Doesn't feed to Eastern. So why North Penn?
Well,
Again, because it is frequently cited by members of our community when they've spoken at meetings. That is the reason that it was on the list.
So, I guess there are a couple reasons why we have a comparison list. One is, what does our community use or do people who are looking for where to live or where to buy a home or whatever, what characteristics, are these other districts that they would be looking at the same time? That would be one reason. Another reason would be, who do we want to compare to in terms of similar demographics and teaching style and people that we're trying to either emulate or whatever? Almost everyone in this region compares with Lower Merion as sort of the standard or the top, but in many ways they're demographically a little bit different.
They are democratic. They are demographically different from us in certain ways, and there have been years where we have superseded them for achievement, and years where we haven't. So, but they are not contiguous to us. But they are in Montgomery County.
So I get the sending to Eastern, but I'm not sure why that has to be a criterion. Out of all these schools, the one that I think I hear less of in terms of comparison is Lower Moreland. Lower Moreland.
Lower Moreland is another school like Lower Marion, in my opinion, high achieving, often referenced as a banner school district, and so, and is part of that sort of lower eastern Montgomery County band.
I'm happy with this list. I mean, I think we've gone through some of the criteria, but do we, at least the committee, what do we think about
Yeah, I would
going
just
with
say-
this list?
I think at this point, we just need to kind of set a list and kind of move forward, and in particular, see some data and reporting in regards to making a decision. And I think, if my understanding is correct, this list is somewhat organic. We can grow it or shrink it depending upon how we look at the data. I think for the purposes of this committee, one of the things I think would be good too is to look in particular at an educational standpoint for the example of what curriculum they might use and how we compare in terms of the utilization of that curriculum in terms of results as well. And so I'm not sure if we know, for example, what curriculum choices each one of these school districts have made, but that would be a good report for us to see, I think, moving forward.
Well, sometimes in addition to data comparisons, we've used comparisons of, things like class size or other criteria to see how we're doing relative to peers. And I mean, I'm comfortable with this as a list for this year, and then we can revisit it if the committee members are.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Kim. The only two districts, or maybe one district, is considering Lower Marion, because we are compared to Lower Marion a lot. And when you look at the socioeconomic peers, we do come up as a peer in IDEX, as one of the, very close to Lower Marion. And I think it's something, their scores are excellent, and I think it's something that we always have to look at, and see and strive for. So I'm good with the list, but I'm not sure about Lower Marion, and as we said, it can change, and we'll see where it goes from there.
I agree with her. I mean, I would like to have Lower Marion on there too. So I think because of this, some of the reasons, it's a further out, but I think it's one of those districts that, we would like to compare ourselves to. And when our test scores are doing really well, if Lower Marion's test scores are doing well, then that gives us a good point. And if not, it just says something that we're trying to achieve too, even though some of their demographics are different than ours.
Would it make sense to remove a district that we currently have on the list, like Lower Moreland? Or
Or
would
North
you prefer
Penn.
to keep that North Penn or North Penn?
And I feel like once you include Lower Marion, I'm not sure why you don't also include Upper Marion. Then it just feels kind of arbitrary. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. There's no obvious line to draw.
Upper Marion in some ways is similar to us in terms of size, not necessarily in terms of the financial picture for Upper Marion.
No, their financial picture is dramatically different. They have King of Prussia Mall.
So in the interest of keeping a manageable number, if we add Lower Marion and Upper Marion, is there a district that you would like to have us remove from the list?
I would pull North Penn because it just seems different. It's the one to me that seems different from the others. But if people are comparing it to us with some frequency, maybe I'm missing something. I'm not sure why that is any more than any other district. But they're a lot bigger than us. They're not in the same sort of typically considered academic tier. And they're a lot further from Philadelphia. I think people, when people are deciding where to move, they're not as frequently going to be considered compared to us as someplace like Lower Marion would be.
So that might be true for people who are living in Philadelphia looking to move somewhere, but I think people who are coming to the north or the northwest side of town are likely to look at North Penn as a point of comparison. it's not that much farther from here, and
Well, if it's just that, then Meth Acton is just as close as North Penn.
I guess it's true. I don't know.
So, I mean,
This is
that-
hard.
Yeah.
What do we want to do? I'd leave North Penn on. I don't know what. So,
I would just add Lower Marion and make it 10.
yeah, I'm happy with that. Are we
Okay.
good?
We're good, thank you.
Okay. While we're on the topic of data and comparisons, I do have, and this is open for discussion, but I'm not sure what the plans are. The data comparison will be next month at the education meeting in December. And I think a number of us, we've talked before about looking at our scores over time. Have we grown or declined? So not just a snapshot of this year, but a little bit of historical trend data, if that's okay?
I believe we've done that each year. Our PSSAs are only going into their 4th year of evolution, and we've always included all of the
Okay.
Keystone data pertinent for the last 5 years, 6 years.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. Any other comments on this topic?
Just for the data, I would like to see the cohorts, right? To see how the kids have grown and things like that. That's really what I'm interested in.
That also has always been on our data presentation. It's so important.
Okay, moving on to the next topic is the 2018-19 school year calendar. It is available in the packet or on the Chromebooks. Mr. Sigafus, do you want to speak to that?
Yes. No, I turned it off. There we go. People have copies, but if you want to put it up on the screen, sure. At this time of the year, we actually have just gotten started, it feels like, but it's time to plan for next year, and so that people can make plans accordingly. And we put together the calendar for 2018-2019 with the provisions of making sure that, we get in the 189 teacher days and full year employees that need to get into 260 days. We designate the holidays that are indicated in the employment contracts that we have with our various employee groups. So for the most part, looking at the calendar, you can see we were able to preserve a full week of winter break and spring break, as well as accommodate for some of the other holidays and days off. The one new item is a new color, purple, for what we're categorizing as Act 80 days. Act 80 days are technically student days that get counted as student days, but we're allowed to use those for professional development. So with putting in the request for the 2 Act 80 days, teachers will be able to have professional development on those days, and students, if all goes according to plan, will still end the year on a Friday, June 14th. Had we not gone that route of designating the Act 80 days, students would have had to come back the following week into the 3rd week of June. This, of course, is with the understanding that we don't have any more than 3 snow days. 3 snow days are built into the system. So if we use the days, fine, we're on track. If we don't use the days, we still maintain our last day. Students just get additional days of instruction. It's an arrangement we have with our employee groups that seems to really work out pretty well. So we will have 2 additional in-service days after the last student day in June, on June 17th and 18th. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those for you now.
So the 2 Act 80 days, I think February 5th is the Chinese New Year.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
What's March 11th? Is there any rationale to that day?
March 11th is actually one of the full in-service days that we have this year.
Okay.
A day in March, what we have, yeah.
Any comments or questions on the calendar?
And by the way, on the second page, I forgot to mention too, Mrs. Morrison and I worked with the building administrators to come up with the designated early dismissal days for professional development as well as for parent-teacher conferences, and that's on the back. When we post it on the website too, it'll be included, so it'll make it convenient for parents to have all that information in one place. And with approving it all at the same time by the board, we'll be able to do that.
Are there any comments or questions on the calendar? Then I think we will recommend moving that on. The next item on our agenda is student activities. Mrs. Morrison, do you want to discuss those?
We have 4 student activities to discuss at this committee meeting. We have our Thespian Society trip to the PA Thespian Conference. We have our Upper Dublin High School cheer competition. Our Upper Dublin High School lacrosse team is going to Dallas, Texas, and our Sandy Run Middle School 8th grade team is going to Mount Laurel, New Jersey. We've developed a different protocol for student travel, and we're going to work on bringing more student travel to the committee earlier so that we can go through the approval process a little more efficiently. Some of those you see listed where there was some urgency involved in terms of flights and ticketing, and some of them simply submitted their form earlier than others.
Are there any comments or questions on the activities? Then I think we will recommend moving those on. Thank you for trying to standardize this. I guess it's consistent with our policy that we've developed about field trips, and it should make it much easier for us to review and approve these. All right, the next item is conferences. Again, Mrs. Morrison, are there any comments about these?
Most notably, we are sending our middle school science teachers along with our K-12 science coordinator, as well as myself. We are all attending the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit's Stimulate series to start really thinking about and purposefully planning STEM activities as part of our middle school science program. I think that's an exciting development. Any comments or questions on the conferences? If not, we will recommend those moving on to the legislative agenda. Okay, I think that concludes our regular business for tonight. We are at community input. If anyone in the community would like to speak, come to the podium, state your name and part of the township, and we're going to observe the 4-minute rule, please. Seeing no one come to the podium, going once. All right. In that case, I think the only thing left to do is to announce our next meeting, which is Monday, December 4th at 6 p.m. or immediately following the organization meeting in the Upper Dublin High School Cardinal Room. Thank you all for attending.
Quick announcement that the board will
announcements?
adjourn. The board will adjourn directly to an executive session following this meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for coming.